I knew something was wrong the moment I saw my ID badge sitting on the edge of my keyboard, like it had been placed there on purpose. Not hanging on its hook. Not clipped to my desk lamp where it always lived. Just sitting there. Centered. Waiting. That's not the kind of thing you overlook. My name's Emily. I work in treasury operations 3 years in. I keep my head down. I don't stir drama. I don't play office games. I make sure money moves where it's supposed to when it's supposed to, and that the company never runs dry. Every vendor payment, payroll cycle, tax event, and sweep starts with me. Or more accurately, it starts with my credentials. My clearance isn't just internal. It's legal, embedded, structural. It's the invisible framework holding the whole liquidity system together. That morning was routine. I got in early, before the espresso machine stopped screaming and before anyone in HR remembered they had emotions. I logged in, validated the reserve float, reviewed the auto transfer prep, and ran the reconciliation script I'd written myself, because IT's version was a mess, like a drunk python chewing its own tail. Everything checked out. The usual daily friction showed up. Sloppy routing from a French vendor, someone fat-fingering a supplier amount. I cleaned it all up before 8:45. I even pre-cleared the quarterly sweep, just in case the CFO decided to calm the Series C group chat with an early release. No loose ends. No alerts. No gaps. Just a system humming along under $12.6 million in outbound flow, moving smoothly because I made sure it did. Quick pause before I keep going. If you're still with me, do us a small favor. Hit subscribe and like the video. Almost everyone listens without subscribing. And every click helps keep these stories coming straight from the trenches. Alright, back to it. By 9:06 a.m., I double-checked every custodial ledger tag and queued the core vendor batch. Credential confirmed. Pre-sign valid. Risk thresholds cleared. I was finishing my second coffee when I noticed him through the glass wall. Matt, the new VP of People. Or, as I think of him, HR's house-trained frat bro in a Patagonia vest. He wasn't talking. He was pointing. Right at my desk. I didn't react. I've seen his type before. Smiles that spend easy, charm that spreads fast, ego thick enough to float. About 20 minutes later, he drifted past my desk with that fake laugh confidence and said, "Big day, Emily?" I didn't answer. Just gave a single nod and kept scrolling through my reconciliation buffer. He leaned in and lowered his voice. "Make sure everything's nice and tidy. Some folks are paying attention now. You might think that sounds paranoid, but operations trains you not to guess. We don't assume anything without proof." And Matt wasn't the kind of guy who wasted words unless he was trying to flex. So I checked the internal HR feed. Nothing obvious. But when I walked past the break room toward the archive printer, I saw it. My photo. Pinned to HR's corkboard. A bright red post-it stuck above it. Handwritten in that same frat boy Sharpie confidence. Needs a lesson. It was wedged between a flu shot flyer and an outdated birthday calendar. Like I was some intern who broke the coffee machine, not the person keeping the company's liquidity protocols from collapsing. I stared at it for 3 seconds. Not angry. Not scared. Just thinking. They'd made their move. So I made mine. I went back to my desk, opened the Treasury portal, and without hesitating started the process. I disabled the auto-sign triggers. Revoked the temporary routing approvals. Paused the sweep queue. I didn't hesitate. I hit the kill switch. Flipped my credentials to read-only and signed out. I closed every application. Encrypted my compliance notes into a vault. And sent one email to the CFO. Subject line: Access logs for custodian transition. No message. No signature. Just the attached audit file. I dropped my badge into an envelope, slid it into her inbox, and walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. And somewhere deep inside the building, the machine started to shake. They just didn't feel it yet. The first time Matt cut me off in a meeting, I let it go. Not because I'm passive, but because I've watched guys like him cycle through companies like fast fashion, loud, overconfident, and mysteriously promoted before the ink dries on their contracts. It was a Thursday. A cross-department sync. Me, the CFO, legal, product, HR. I was explaining the updated disbursement controls for the vendor migration. Tightened thresholds, dual sign-off baked into the ledger, new compliance routing for international wires. Real infrastructure. Adult work. Matt jumped in before I finished. Wait, sorry, he said, flashing that grin he probably picked up at a Sigma Chi mixer. Did you say manual routing logic? Like folders and stuff? A few people chuckled. Soft laughs. Careful laughs. I kept going. It's ledger-based validation, not folders. The process ensures, he waved his hand. Emily, we're a tech company. That sounds like something you do at a bank in 1998. I felt the CFO shift beside me. She knew the system I'd built was the reason our last audit passed clean. Not a single note. But she stayed quiet. So did I. I just looked at him. Didn't blink. Burned the exact curl of his smile into my memory. The look men get when they think they've won a room that doesn't know any better. Later that day, I needed a backup credential report from HR. Routine. I walked through their shared space. Open floor plan, fake plants, team photos like summer camp, and that's when I saw it. My headshot. Printed in black and white. Pinned dead center on the corkboard. In red Sharpie, all caps. Needs a lesson. Under it, someone had drawn a little smiley face with excess for eyes. Just subtle enough to pass as a joke if questioned. Just loud enough to be a warning. A public mark. I stood there for 5 seconds. Long enough to feel the blood rush in my ears, and then drain into that cold, quiet place where rage goes when it doesn't scream. I didn't tear it down. I didn't storm into Matt's office. I didn't email HR. I didn't even take a picture. What I did was walk back to my desk, sit down, and start drafting the internal kill order for my own access. If they wanted to play games, they could do it without the person keeping their financial lungs breathing. It wasn't the first time a smug little king tried to humiliate me for knowing too much and smiling too little. But it was the first time I let them dig the hole themselves. Because what Matt never understood, what none of them ever do, is that in treasury operations power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's systemic. And once it's gone, no amount of scrambling brings it back. So I spent the rest of that afternoon doing what I do best. Setting the levers. Quietly unhooking myself from every disbursement trigger. Turning compliance flags gray. Locking audit trails behind hashes only I could unwind. Dozens of tiny threads, invisible to everyone else. But pull even one the wrong way, and the entire liquidity system would seize like a rusted engine. Matt could have just said thank you in that meeting. Could have nodded and moved on. Instead, he put a target on me. And I don't miss. The final straw wasn't the corkboard. It wasn't Matt's smug grin when he strolled past my desk later that afternoon, shot me a finger gun and said, "All in good fun, right, Em?" It wasn't even the passive-aggressive email from HR that landed at 5:17 p.m. Subject line, performance culture alignment, asking me to swing by for a quick feedback sync. It was the spreadsheet, the one I'd opened 1,000 times before, the daily liquidity master, the file nobody else truly understood. It lived in a private vault folder, tied to 3 compliance flags and 4 alert triggers. That evening, I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't checking numbers. I wasn't reconciling anything. I was just looking at it. And then I did something I'd never done before. Closed it. Not saved. Not sent. Just closed. I shut down the terminal, logged out of the internal portal, and opened the Treasury suite one last time. I walked through every scheduled wire. Flagged every outbound vendor push. Paused the auto-sweep queue. Disabled the overnight float validation. A few clicks here. Toggle there. Nothing dramatic. Just deliberate. Then I rerouted my credentials to read-only. Not revoked. Not deleted. Just frozen. An elegant deadlock that would let the system keep breathing right up until it needed my fingerprint. And when it reached for me, it would get nothing back. After that, I pulled the final lever. I set the outbound cash reconciliation batch to needs custodian authorization, a box only one person could check. Not the CFO, not finance, not IT, me, the named custodian. Written into policy, written by me, enforced by systems I'd built because no one else ever bothered to care. HR pinged me again as I zipped my laptop into my bag. "Hi Emily. Just following up on our earlier note, would love to chat tomorrow." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my drawer and took out my badge. That cheap laminated rectangle, corner peeling. Barcode burned into muscle memory. I looked at it for a second. then slipped it into a plain white envelope and wrote one word across the front in black ink. For Marcy, the CFO. She was the only person in that building who ever really understood what I did. The only one who listened when I explained why I'd built the system the way I had. She trusted me because she had to, and maybe because she knew that while the VPs made noise, I made things work. I walked the envelope down to her glass-walled office. Lights off. She'd already left, probably to prep for the investor call in the morning. Poor woman had no idea her entire cash certification tree would be empty by sunrise. I slid the envelope through the mail slot in her door. No note. No warning. No goodbye. Then I walked out. No one looked up. Not product. Not legal. Not even the intern who'd been shadowing me all week and still couldn't say it without stuttering. I didn't need them to. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was walking out with the one thing no one in that building could buy, replace, or fake trust embedded deep in the bloodstream of the system. When I stepped into the elevator, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clarity, the kind you get when you know the game is already over, and the other side hasn't figured out they lost yet. I didn't slam the door on my way out. I didn't have to. The silence would handle that for me. Matt came back from lunch like he'd just closed a funding round himself. Aviators tucked into his collar, voice just loud enough to make sure people heard him talking about scaling culture and firing with intent. He stopped by the espresso machine, cracked some embarrassing joke to a marketing girl half his age, then strutted back to his desk like the second act of a sitcom nobody asked for. Then the pings started. Not on his Slack. Finance. From across the floor, I imagine it began small. It probably started with one analyst, Sherry if I had to guess, staring at a bounce confirmation notice, confused. She would have checked the payment ID, refreshed the portal, re-downloaded the remittance stub. Same result. Still red. Still flagged. Then a couple more flags popped up. Then 4. By 1:17 p.m., someone from AP was on their feet, scanning the room and saying, is anyone else getting the authorization required error? Matt was back at his desk and didn't even bother looking up. A junior controller walked over. Hey Matt, do you know if Emily's out today? Matt didn't pause. Probably at yoga or something. Why? The controller hesitated. Because her cert isn't showing. The liquidity dashboard won't load past batch 2. And the wire queue keeps failing checks. Matt spun around in his chair like a bargain bin Bond villain. What does that even mean? It means nothing's clearing, the controller said carefully. No cash movement. Vendor wires are bouncing. The cert ledger's empty. Matt scoffed and stood up, clapping his hands once like applause could fix it. All right. Let's not panic over a dashboard glitch. IT will handle it. Another analyst spoke up, a younger guy, voice tight. It's not IT, sir. This is Treasury. Emily's credential was the disbursement anchor. Matt blinked like he just heard a foreign language. The what? The disbursement anchor, the analyst said again. It's the policy lock on float certification and batch triggers. Without her credential, the wires can't move. Legally. Matt shook his head, smirking. Christ. You people and your acronyms. Just override it. The room went quiet. Then someone said, we can't. That's when the air changed. Not panic. Not yet. Just that strange static that hits when smart people realize they're not actually in control of what they thought they were running. Matt tried again. Can't we reroute it to another approver? The controller answered flatly. She was the only named custodian on the account. Treasury policy binds disbursement to that credential. Her signature key isn't just an ID. It's a compliance flag. The system won't accept any other credential unless she transfers it herself. She quit. Matt laughed, still brushing it off. She just walked out? Come on. No one laughed. Another alert filled the shared finance screen. Daily liquidity cert. Missing, awaiting primary custodian. A lawyer from legal leaned in through the doorway. Hey, why did Coastal Trust just send us a compliance alert? They're flagging our vendor disbursements as unauthorized. Matt's face drained a shade lighter. The smirk stayed, but now it looked glued on. Everyone relax, he said. This is fixable. I'll ping Marcy. We'll loop in IT, get someone to proxy the approval. Probably just a permissions issue. Sherry raised her hand, eyes still locked on her monitor. Matt. The system just threw another warning. Custodial verification expired. Human override not permitted. Matt stared at her like she was making it up. Then his eyes drifted down the hallway toward HR, toward the corkboard. And for a brief second the smirk cracked. Not gone. Not erased. Just fractured. The door slammed harder than usual. Every conversation in finance cut off mid-sentence like someone hit mute. Then came the sound of heels, sharp, fast, deliberate, cutting across the tile like a warning shot. Marcy. Our CFO didn't do drama. She was calm, tactical, surgically precise. But when she walked in that day, phone still in her hand, mouth set in a line that looked carved into place, you could feel the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. She didn't say hello. Didn't nod. She stood in the middle of the floor and scanned the room like she was searching for a fire alarm no one had pulled. For once Matt didn't speak first. She lowered the phone, clicked it off and slipped it into her palm. Her thumb trembled just a little. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady, but there was a chill in it that locked everyone in their chairs. Where's your cash controller? Matt blinked like he hadn't processed the question. Sorry, who? She didn't move. Emily. Where is she? Matt let out a short, nervous laugh. Oh, her. Yeah, I think she took a personal day or something. HR flagged a culture issue. Probably didn't love the feedback. You know how some people get when. Stop talking, Marcy said. The room froze. She turned her head slowly, eyes drifting toward the corkboard outside HR. From where she stood, you could just see the edge of the photo. The red words. Needs a lesson. Marcy stepped forward. One step. Then another. She pointed. That. What exactly did you tell HR to do? Matt's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I mean, nothing major. It was a joke. I just told them to give her a little push. Culturally. Help her collaborate more. She's kind of a lone wolf, you know? Old school. Marcy snapped back toward him so fast he actually flinched. She walked out. Matt swallowed. Okay, but. She walked out, Marcy repeated. And she took our cash controls with her. Do you understand what that means? She's not the only person who can move money, he said, trying to push back. No, Marcy replied evenly. She was the only one who legally could. People started standing now. Finance leads. Treasury analysts. Legal. One of them spoke quietly. We tried to force a proxy approval on the primary vendor queue. The system rejected it. Said the credential hash was invalid. Marcy nodded, slow and controlled, like it confirmed what she already knew. She wrote the hash logic, she said. She designed the entire policy framework. She's the reason we passed our Series B audit without a single note. She built the custodial lock after Coastal flagged us for distributed risk. You don't replace someone like that with a memo. Matt was sweating now. Actually sweating. Okay, but can't we just bring her back? She didn't give notice. That's a breach. Do you know what Coastal Bank just told me? Marcy snapped. They said we violated our own disbursement policy, that our outbound liquidity is compromised, that our vendor chain is frozen until a credentialed custodian revalidates the float. Matt started to speak again. Marcy shut it down. No. Don't. She turned to legal. Pull every policy document she touched. Every section. Then Treasury. I want a full readout of the disbursement chain. Freeze anything that wasn't pre-cleared. Then she turned back to Matt. She stepped in close. Too close. And when she spoke, her voice carried just far enough for everyone to hear. You put her on a wall like a joke. You mocked the one person in this building who knew where the wires were buried. And now you're standing in a company that doesn't know how to pay its bills. She let the silence hang. No one moved. No one breathed. Matt looked around, waiting for someone to save him. No one did. Marcy's last words were quiet. Start over. Tell me exactly what you told HR to do. And for the first time since he'd arrived at the company, Matt had nothing to say. It started small, like a single thread slipping loose in a tightly knit sweater. Just after 2 p.m., a vendor called. It started with one of the international vendors. Big account. Loud voice. Zero patience for excuses. Their wire hadn't landed. No payment confirmation. You said the funds would arrive by end of day. It's already midnight here. AP tried to stall, offered a tracking number, bought time, but the truth was simple. There was no wire. It had never gone out. The system never fired. By 2:17, another vendor was calling. Then another. Then payroll. "We've got a critical mismatch," the controller said, her face drained of color. "The payroll sweep didn't run." "Didn't run, or didn't complete?" someone asked. "Didn't run," she said again. "The automation flag was bypassed. It's hard-coded for custodian sign-off. It's locked in read-only mode." Finance clustered around the Treasury dashboard like a crime scene unit. Red flags kept popping up. The float was still there, but unreachable. The wires were queued but dead. Reserve reports sat frozen in draft, waiting on a credential that wasn't answering anymore. And behind them all stood Matt, wearing that wounded, dismissive look, like someone had canceled his fantasy football draft and called it a crisis. Marcy didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. She pulled up the internal policy binder. Section 12.3b. Authorized disbursement officer credentials shall not be delegated, proxied, or reassigned without dual-party transition and compliance sign-off. Her voice cut straight through the noise. "She's the ADO. The only one." "But surely," Matt tried. Marcy snapped toward him. "Surely what, Matt? That we can wave a wand and reroute Treasury access because your ego couldn't handle being corrected in a meeting." Matt opened his mouth, closed it. "Her credential wasn't just a login," Marcy continued. "It was the linchpin. Every vendor push, every Treasury transfer, every reserve release ran through her authorization framework. You think that disappears because HR sent her a calendar invite called feedback session? Legal was scrambling now, PDFs flying, compliance templates open everywhere." The CTO wandered in, pale, holding his phone like it might explode. "We just got a call from Sequoia's associate counsel," he said. "They're asking why a $2.2 million Series C wire bounced from our outbound queue." Marcy didn't blink. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Our disbursement custodian walked. Because our VP of people pinned her photo to a corkboard like a threat." The CTO swallowed. "Is this a PR issue?" "It's a liquidity issue," Marcy snapped. "And if we don't fix it in 12 hours, it turns into a default issue." Someone in AP gasped. "Vendor 6 just sent a litigation intent notice. Failure to deliver inside the contract window triggers a 3% penalty." Matt leaned against a desk now like his legs had finally given up. His voice was small. "Can't we just restore her credential?" "No," the head of compliance said quietly. "It was tied to a biometric token. She revoked real-time access. Legally, we can't spoof it without triggering an internal fraud flag. We'd be liable for every transaction after. And even if we could," the controller added, "she's the only one who actually knows how the approval flow works. She coded it herself. The framework isn't documented." Finance stared at the screen. Red blocks. Frozen transfers. One blinking line over and over. "Custodian authorization required." Marcy breathed out slowly through her nose. Then she looked at Matt. "You understand now?" His answer was barely a whisper. "I didn't know it would spiral." "No," she said. "You didn't care enough to ask what she did." From the outside, the company still looked perfect. Clean website. Strong funding. Glowing press. But inside, the arteries were clogged. And the blood wasn't moving. And then, everyone started to realize something unsettling. Without Emily, they didn't know how to move their own money. And the engine was already stalling. By 3:40 p.m., the war room had shifted from panic to something worse, recognition. Marcy stood alone at the whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, marker smudged on her wrist. Every single process, every wire path, ledger control, float recalibration, internal reserve clearance, was now laid out in black and blue ink, traced back to one name over and over again. Emily Tran. Her signature was everywhere but never loud. Always hidden in the metadata. Always beneath the surface like a watermark you only saw when the light hit it right. Vendor 3. Required her dual approval token. Payroll. Her routing logic. Treasury float recon. Built on a timing structure only she understood. A structure synced across systems no one thought to document. The pattern was surgical. Not vengeful. Not malicious. Just meticulous. She hadn't sabotaged anything. She had simply walked away from the thing only she knew how to operate. Marcy had already tried calling her twice, once on her cell, once on Signal just in case. No answer. No read receipt. No reply. It wasn't a game. It was a message. Matt stood at the edge of the room, slumped like someone waiting for a sentence. His arms were crossed, but not in confidence, in self-protection. He wasn't defending himself anymore. Just bracing. Marcy didn't even glance at him when she said, "The float's aging out in 7 hours. If we don't reconcile and trigger the ledger cert, we'll be flagged as non-compliant with every single partner bank." Someone from legal spoke softly. "Is that reversible?" Marcy shook her head. "Technically, yes. Operationally, no. The ledger wasn't just coded by her. It was written into our policy. She had final sign-off on disbursement logic. Every daily cert file had her fingerprint. You can't fake that. The banks won't accept a substitute." A beat of silence. Then Matt muttered it, almost involuntarily. "It was just a joke." The room went even quieter. Marcy turned slowly, staring at him like she just noticed a cracked floor tile for the first time. "A joke," she said flatly. He nodded. "I didn't think she was so quiet. I didn't know she was central." Marcy blinked once. No one's central until they're gone. Another beat passed. She turned back to the board and circled a section labeled Custodial Override Pathway. Unlinked. She decoupled the fallback route, she said, almost to herself. Months ago. After the Sequoia audit flagged redundant approvals as a risk vector. She rewrote the entire fallback schema. I signed off on it. I didn't even think about what it meant if she left. The junior controller whispered. Was it on purpose? Marcy answered without hesitation. No. It was just good policy. We got lean. We centralized. She became the structure. We didn't build around her. We built on her. Matt exhaled. So what do we do? Marcy finally looked at him again. You start writing a statement, she said, explaining to the board why payroll's late, why vendors are threatening litigation, and why investor wires are bouncing. I didn't mean for this, he muttered. No one ever means for failure, Marcy said quietly. But it finds you anyway. Especially when you fire the person holding up the ceiling because you thought she was in the way. Someone from HR peeked in face pale. Board wants to schedule an emergency call. They're asking if Treasury has stabilized. Marcy didn't respond. She just looked down at her phone one more time. Still no reply. No missed calls. No typing bubbles. Just the name, Emily. And beneath it, the missed call from earlier. Today, 2:31 p.m. No answer. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she set the phone down and went back to work. It was 11:24 p.m. when the message finally came through. No subject line. No small talk. Just one sentence written with the kind of precision that only comes from watching a building collapse in slow motion for 10 straight hours. Come back. Write your terms. I'll sign. Marcy. I looked at it for a second, the glow of my phone lighting up my apartment like a stage spotlight. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. There was no music playing, no champagne chilling. Just the steady tick of my old wall clock and the low hum of my laptop fan. I already knew this was coming. They always think the system runs itself until it doesn't. I typed exactly 13 words back. Reinstated under named custodian retainer. Contracted, not employed. Triple current comp net 90. No emojis. No pleasantries. No follow-up. 30 seconds later, a single PDF landed in my inbox. Signed. Not by legal. Not by HR. By Marcy herself. DocuSign timestamp. 11:26 p.m. CFO override authorization. Emergency contract ratification. She didn't hesitate. She couldn't afford to. Back in that office, a dozen panicked VPs were probably buried in compliance manuals, hunting for a workaround to a system they'd never bothered to understand. Matt was likely still trapped in that glass conference room, staring at whiteboards filled with acronyms he used to laugh at. And me? I was at my kitchen table in sweatpants, drinking stale coffee, legally holding the strings to the company's entire financial bloodstream. I didn't ask to be reinstated. This wasn't a return. It was a rewrite. They didn't get Emily the employee anymore, the version they could pin to a corkboard and joke about behind closed doors. They got Emily the retained custodian, Emily the vendor, Emily the contractual requirement. No more birthday parties. No more check-ins. No more Matt. I opened the Treasury portal from my encrypted drive and reactivated the custodial credential. Everything snapped back online instantly. Float clearance. Vendor pushes. Payroll pre-cert. No one said thank you. No one needed to. The lesson had already landed. At 12:02 a.m., I got one final Slack message from Marcy. Confirmed. Cleared. Thank you. That was it. By morning, the office would be buzzing again. Payroll would post. Vendors would get paid. Sequoia would stop asking questions. And I would be gone. Not invisible. Just unreachable. On paper, I was still there, listed as the named custodian on every disbursement file, every ledger, every compliance review. But I never set foot in that building again. Not once. I didn't need to, because from that moment on, I wasn't part of the machine. I was the person who wrote the manual and leased them the key. It was almost a month later when the binder surfaced. Some poor junior associate, fresh out of undergrad, still trying to prove himself, had been handed cleanup duty after a week of frantic policy rewrites. Legal's orders were simple. Audit every process Emily Tran ever touched, document the gaps, and figure out how to stop another collapse without triggering a new compliance nightmare. He was buried in old onboarding packets and dusty infrastructure maps when he found it, wedged between two procurement manuals in the back of a filing cabinet no one had opened in years. Thick, matte black, no branding, just a single white label on the spine. Key person dependencies, Treasury. The lock was cheap, a basic 3-digit dial. But taped just beneath it was a post, written in narrow, no-nonsense handwriting. Code 314. The kid opened the binder like he was defusing a bomb. Inside there were no charts, no flow diagrams, just a handful of sparse pages. No fluff, no filler. And on the very first sheet, centered in 14-point font, disbursement authority is non-transferable without original named custodian credential. No exceptions. No footnotes. No fallback clause. The page carried 3 signatures, the CFO, the head of compliance, and mine. He stared at it for a long moment, then quietly closed the binder and carried it down the hall to Marcy's office. She didn't look surprised when she saw it. She just nodded once and said, "Put it on the shelf behind me." By then the dust had mostly settled. Payroll was running again. Vendors were paid. The Sequoia rep had stopped calling. Investors received their quarterly update, complete with a carefully worded paragraph about updated internal protocols reflecting evolving operational dependencies. My name never appeared. Didn't need to. Everyone who mattered already knew. Matt? He was still around. Technically. But the glass office he used to occupy had been relocated 2 doors down. His calendar was packed with meetings like Team Culture Deep Dive and Bias in Org Structure. No more finance access. No more budget approvals. He talked less, smiled even less. Word was he'd been reassigned to strategic support initiatives, which is corporate for stay out of the way and don't break anything else. HR's wall was wiped clean. Corkboard gone. Fresh paint over the drywall. Like none of it ever happened. But right above the coffee machine, on the wall outside the break room, someone quietly taped up a photocopy. My photo. The same one Matt had pinned up. Still grainy. Still black and white. Still slightly crooked. The words "needs a lesson" had been carefully crossed out. And underneath in Sharpie someone had written, "Lesson delivered." No one ever admitted who put it there. Nobody took it down. Every time someone stood in line waiting for their latte, they saw it. And they remembered. Not the fallout. Not the panic. Not even the silence that followed. They remembered the quiet woman who never raised her voice, never made a scene, and still brought an entire system to its knees simply by walking away. I never asked for revenge. I got something better. I became a ghost with a signature, and a rate they'll never forget. My boss taped my photo to HR's wall with a note. "Needs a lesson." I didn't fight it. I didn't explain. I just walked out. Less than 20 minutes later, he strolled back from lunch and froze. The CFO was already there. The office went dead quiet when she said, calm and cold, "The bank just called. Let's rewind. Tell me exactly what you told her to do."